Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, leading publishers of books, directories, educational guides and magazines aimed at schools in the UK and beyond. Enjoy the podcast.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. It's Tuesday evening. It's the late show with Lucy Neuburger. I feel I haven't done this in a while. Hello, admin. It's always good to know. It's always comforting to know I'm coming through loud and clear. So this evening, in a few moments, I will be talking to the delightful Mr. Alan Swee, who I can see has just popped into the studio there. So we will speak to him in a moment. But before we get into all that, and before we get into this evening's fireside chat, as Mr. Alan Swee described it earlier, I should take you through the week's proceeding, or rather the last couple of weeks, because I haven't been here. And all sorts of things are going on. I spent part of half term in Bologna, in Italy, which was great. I pastored myself into oblivion, to the point where, and I am a big pasta lover. Like, I've grown up eating pasta in all its glorious forms. And so when I went to the home of ragu, I knew I was going to do well, and I did. It was morning, noon, and night, and I loved every second of it, but I have not wished to eat it since. I also do miss having a lunchtime wine, it has to be said. Now, obviously can't do that in school, nor would I, but it when you're pretending to be Italian and wandering the streets of a lovely city, it's I think it's okay to have a glass of wine with lunch. But back to reality and back into school, and mercifully it is quite a short half term this time around, in that mine is only 5 weeks long, but I do have to crack out a set of reports in that time, which is going to be interesting. And my poor co-teacher, my poor co-year 5 teacher, has not been at all well really since term started. So I have been propping up year 5, shall we say. How good a job I'm doing, debatable, but it's hard enough to run your own class on a daily basis, never mind trying to run around finding cover for everybody. And we cover internally at school, so depending on if you're free or not, you'll usually be sent to, well, anywhere really, from year 1 to year 6, or to year 7 actually in some cases, because we have year 7 on site at our primary school. So it's been a bit of a run around, a bit interesting. As always, my class are absolutely bananas. And the quote of the week this week, which I've shared with a few people to mixed reactions. I should preface this by saying that the kid in question is a lovely kid, okay? So that's the first thing. And I don't think when he said this, he was trying to be mean or trying to be sort of... It was cheeky, but anyway, see what you think. You can judge for yourselves. So I famously say, as I think many primary and maybe even some secondary teachers, I famously say to children, if you waste my time, I will waste yours. It's an age-old thing and seems to be quite effective. And so this child in my class, we were in the middle of a lesson, and he turned to me and said, and he's got a lovely Irish accent, which I will not try and imitate, but he said to me, "Miss," I said, "Yes, child." I called him by his name, but for the sake of the story, we'll call him child. You know when you say that if we waste your time, you'll waste ours? And as soon as I said yes, I regretted it, because I thought, oh gosh, what on earth is going to come next? He said, well, you're wasting our time by trying to teach us things. We should be at Disneyland. And it's one of those things where I had to pause for a moment, because I think some teachers would have probably got quite cross at that. Others, I don't know. I thought for a moment, and I said, well, you know, that may be your opinion at the moment, and that may be how you feel here and now. But one day, I hope that you look back on your time in year 5 and you think, "Do you know what? That mad old bat who taught me in year 5, maybe, just maybe on some occasions she might have had a point here or there, but I think we should probably move on now." And I just left it because uh, honestly didn't really know what else to say to him. And because he's one of those kids, he's a highly intelligent kid. He's got a reading age of like a 17-year-old or something ridiculous like that. So, and knowing him like I do, I don't feel that it was meant in anything other than him just being a bit cheeky, really. So that was my quote of the week. What else has been going on at school? That's just all a bit mad, really. Generally, I mean, I always feel like teaching it's just a constant kind of merry-go-round of varying things. So there we go. But I don't think there's anything else major to report. I'm sure some things will come to me. But no, nothing springing to mind. So we should probably crack on with this evening's proceedings, shouldn't we? Now, some of you listening may be aware that I have been doing a primary subject sort of journey, if you like. I started a few weeks ago, back in January, I think it must have been now, with maths. I moved on to writing. I've looked at guided reading. I have looked briefly at science, which I want to revisit because I had a bit of debacle with getting my guest to connect and all the rest of it. But hopefully we can revisit that one at some point. I've done PE, forgot about PE. That's terrible. And I've done a very good PE one as well. And I've arrived now at computing, which is one that I've wanted to look at since I started this journey. Now, I don't actually teach computing at school. It's taught by a specialist teacher. However, I think it was important to include this. I mean, hugely important, as when Alan joins us, he will, I'm sure, reiterate and make you believe if you don't already. But I also wanted to expand this out kind of more widely. And again, I'm sure Alan will do this when he speaks to us, into sort of wider digital literacy within school, because certainly on our medium term plans, for example, when we're talking about what it is we're going to do and where things are going to fit in, we have that computing section, but then we also have a digital literacy section. Should they go hand in hand? Should they be together? Or should class teachers be thinking about it more widely? And I also wanted to think about what computing actually means as a subject, because I think that certainly when I looked at Mr. M ICT, who was meant to be joining us this evening, but unfortunately can't at the moment, he might pop in later. But when I had a look through his blog and his Twitter feed and things like that, he starts one of his posts by actually opening up and asking what computing is and the misconceptions from teachers, particularly primary teachers, about what it entails or what it can entail.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. So I am Alan Sue. I work at Willowbrook Primary School in East London. I am also usually on a Tuesday evening the host of Kaz Chat, the Kaz Chat even hashtag with via my Kaz Chat _UK Twitter account. But tonight I'm very honoured and privileged and grateful to be invited to speak to you. So here I am. I'm also, in addition to being a primary school teacher in East London, the Computing at School community lead for Waltham Forest. I don't know why I ummed. Anyway, so I'm the Waltham Forest Computing at School community lead for Waltham Forest. So I kind of know a bit about computing, I guess. So there we are.
Well, I'm very grateful to have you here, and I know that you do sort of follow in the background, and I know you followed this subject series that I've done, or at least in part. And
yes.
I know
I heard your science one.
Well, yes, which was which I'm going to revisit that at some point. It didn't quite go the way that I wanted, but we'll get back to it. We'll go there again, and it'll be absolutely fine. And I know that you were meant to be part of a fabulous double act with Mr. MICT this
Yeah,
evening.
Carl McGrath unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, but I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will dip in when he hears me goading him.
Oh,
But
maybe.
he's a good friend. I met him back in 2020 when the world was so strange and we were all kind of getting used to meeting people via video calls. And the Computing at School community led a kind of virtual conference. So it was the first time kind of being working from home for all those days and weeks that I had the opportunity to meet these amazing people. And that was when I met Carl for the first time.
And it's I suppose it's the wonderful power of the Edu Twitter community as well. There are lots of us around doing lots of great things, and it's well, certainly I found for the most part it to be a brilliant community with lots of different arms, lots of different sort of subject areas, lots of different bits and pieces that I've been able to tap into through Teachers Talk Radio. So it's been an adventure for me, and I'm sure it has for you as well.
Yeah, it has been. Part of my adventure is for those of you, for those listening or who are kind of connected via Twitter, have kind of spotted that my kind of 11,000 plus followers is not because I've been around on. It looks like that I've only been on Twitter for a couple of years, but I've actually been longer than that. The first time I joined Twitter was in 2012, straight after I completed my PGCE. But I had a Control-Alt-Delete moment back in 2019 when my bosses kind of took umbrage and exception to what I said at the time, and it got a little bit nasty. So I decided to step out of the Twitter sphere for over a month. And for those who know about these things or have experienced these things, when you step away for over a month, it deletes your account kind of almost in its entirety. So my 7-year record from before 2019 was completely gone. So in 2020, I kind of re-established myself, and with having the opportunity to work from home, I just kind of spent time trying to make people smile by posting all sorts of nonsense, like my 5 o'clock teacher 5 o'clock club morning mugshot. I'll get that right. Yeah. So if you're around at breakfast time, come say hi.
Fabulous. And I mean, yeah, very, very impressive Twitter following. I mean, we've got to be so careful, haven't we? And I'm sure this will form part of the chat we have this evening, certainly when we talk about children, talk about kids using this tech, of course. And just as
Absolutely.
I was waiting for you to connect, I was looking at the computing curriculum, which I'm sure we'll touch on.
I heard your introduction, and it kind of got me frantically trying to get the technology to work so I can join in the conversation.
And so, and not leaving me to a monologue, which many people have had to listen to over time. I have done a few monologues where I've thought, please, someone just cut me off and interject. So let's get cracking.
Okay.
When I was looking through, it was actually one of Mr. M's blog posts, and it was talking about what is computing and what people understand by this word, I guess. And it stopped me in my tracks because to me, I was thinking, well, computers, duh. And of course, it's more than that. And I just want to know, first of all, kind of when I say primary computing or computing to you, I mean, if you can even do this, in short, sort of what does that mean to you?
Computing and technology is everywhere for everyone. That is my current school intent. And what that means is that from the moment that before people are born to the moment they pass this earth, technology is with us now, whether we like it or we don't. So as part of that kind of thinking, I teach a subject to do with technology, and that's what my existence is all about.
I mean, that's pretty succinct. I'm pretty impressed with that. I didn't know if
Ofsted
I was
ready. Ofsted ready. If you're listening, Ofsted, come find me.
I was honestly thinking, gosh, if I just dropped a kind of whoop of a question first of all, where Alan's going to go, oh really, Lucy? Is that really what you're opening with?
Seriously, the point is, for those people who are leading their subjects, you really do need to have that conversation. Have I just cut myself off and just lost?
No, you're still coming through. You're all good.
Oh, great.
Don't panic.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Don't
just
panic.
my phone decided to look as if it fall asleep, which is entirely possible that people listening are actually doing that. But anyway, yeah, so what I urge subject leaders to do is really do think about their subject in that way. Ask yourself, what is it I'm teaching and why am I teaching it? Really do know your why. And that's a serious point. I mean, I've been... I love this word that I first heard Professor Danielle George say a few years ago at her medal-winning inaugural lecture at the Royal Society. She calls this thinkering, this process of tinkering and thinkering combined, so thinkering. And I've been thinkering around computers for the best part of over 40 years now. So I've seen the evolution of technology go from this really clunky, plug it into the back of a TV and make a few colors and count some numbers kind of phenomenon to this part of our lives where the device I'm holding right now has more power than the command control center of the moon landing center. So it's epic stuff. It's powerful, and I'm really proud to be part of so many people's journeys in getting to grips with the technology, learning about it, and keeping them safe.
I mean, most definitely. And I do feel, and again, I'm sure this will sort of come up at various points, so I don't want to delve too much into it now, but do you feel that whole thing was fast-tracked by pandemic and by being shoved back into your house and having to still connect with the world, still go to work as us teachers all did? The only difference being is that we were going to work from our sitting rooms or wherever we happen to be, or our kitchens.
Absolutely and undoubtedly. There have been many studies in the last 2 years where they look back on 2020 and say, had 2020 not happened, much of the kind of development in technology, particularly with the familiarity that we all have now become accustomed to of video calling, has just grown exponentially. And from my own experience of working with primary age children, they now show, there are children I work with, I teach from nursery to year 6. So for the international listener, that's from 3 years old to about 11 years old. The children who are 3 and 4 years old are very, very familiar with technology now, to the point that I can go into my nursery class on a Friday morning and they will some of them will happily log in independently.
Wow. I mean, in a way, that's incredible, but I also wonder, and again, I'm sure there's lots of things that will kind of, I do a lot of tangents, a lot of pits, so
yeah,
go with me on it.
Yes, but I will.
Do you feel, and this maybe is a slightly negative point in hearing about those young children, is this partly to do with, when they've gone out with parents or when they've been in situations where parents are trying to kind of calm them down or sort of distract them in some way, that they've been, in front of an iPad since before they could, well, in some cases before they could even talk?
Yeah, I get where some people have kind of would level that criticism at people like me and say, you can't be teaching computing to 3-year-olds, surely not. But the reality of it is that if you come to my school's nursery, you'll see that actually the children are very good at self-regulating, and I will put out some devices for them to have some time working independently and having some self-directed learning. I'll be on hand to give them some guidance and facilitate some directed time as well. But beyond that, once they've had enough, they will just get up and walk away. And it is very interesting that if you give children the opportunity to be self-regulating, they have that ability to as young as they are in nursery and reception.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
And I think also again, this goes back to that definition of computing, and because people often think, and I think certainly those who are maybe, and I don't want to use age as an example here because that's not necessarily fair, but people who are less au fait with technology in general, when they think of computing, ICT, whatever you want to call it, they are thinking often that you are sticking kids in front of an iPad or in front of a laptop.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's maybe where that slight sort of comes from. What they're neglecting are things like, well, the robotics side of it, I guess, Bebots, which I'm sure you've used in your time.
Yes.
All those things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really urge people just to come and see the computing lessons I deliver, and you realise that it's not passive at all. It is very active. It is. I plan and pitch my lessons in such an engaging way that some of the children don't want me to stop their lessons at the end. They're simply because they enjoy the opportunity to follow whatever they're learning about and whatever activity that we're working on. I do agree, though, that there are some situations, I'll call them situations, where there are people who, unfortunately, will either find themselves in a place where if they were given a device in their hands, that's all they'll want to do. That's all they'll sit and do. And there are also people who think it's okay to kind of let those who aren't able to access the curriculum in the way that we'd like them to, just to sit there passively in front of a device, and that's sad. I want to break away from that, and I want to help others break away from that.
And just, I mean, on the point of curriculum, I've got the computing program of study for Key Stage 1 and 2 in front of me, which
nebulously and vacuously written piece of paper if I've ever seen one.
Or in the case for me, it's just a kind of digital page. And I mean, I don't know if I've just been very dismissive or if I've just looked at this and gone, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's, I mean, it's, to me, it's quite limiting. To me, a lot of it, I would look at that, and the vast majority of teachers I would work with would struggle to tell you the definition of the vast majority of these words. And these
Absolutely.
are people who can use,
as
I've said, who were quite competent or quite very competent during lockdown in terms of, using their using Google Classroom, using video calling, using all of these things. So people who I would consider technologically literate or digitally literate, if you like. But again, looking at some of these words, like I certainly couldn't confidently tell you what debug means. Where was another one that I picked? I mean, and algorithms, I can tell you what that means, because of course algorithms don't just come up in computing or in when we're talking about computers. Algorithms come up throughout, and I think people forget about this, throughout many of the subjects, certainly in maths, even in English as well. And I think people, lose sight of that. So when they see algorithm in terms of computing and in terms of technology, they think, oh God, well, I don't know what that means. Well, maybe you do. You just haven't thought about it.
Yeah, there is a bit of that, but there's also, as I say, although I'm being very, very tongue-in-cheek when I talk about the quality of the program of study, it is so lacking in detail. When I was looking by comparison with the program of study for science, the science one is so much more structured. It has more kind of detail, and the headlines that are presented within the program of study for science are just enable any primary teacher with sufficient kind of subject knowledge, just up to kind of school GCSE, maybe A-level standard, to be able to unpack it and organise it into a sequence of lessons. Whereas the computing program of study is almost as though it's written by a group of people back in the early part of the last decade, where they said, right, this is where we want our learners to be by the end of GCSE or A-level, and let's kind of just peel it back to a point where we think, oh, maybe they'll be able to cover it in secondary. That's my feeling. That's my genuine and honest feeling. So it's taken me, I've been a subject lead now for 3 years. I've been subject lead since 2020. It's only got to this point where I can feel confident enough to say, right, I can unpack this, take it down to a point where I can work with a range of kind of sources and resources to create a scheme or a sequence of lessons which colleagues can relate to and children can follow.
I mean, it's. I'm just looking as well alongside, feeding into what you're saying and looking at the curriculum. I'm just looking at the part of the research review series. I don't know. Again, I'm sure.
Please, no.
I'm sure
no.
you.
I had
I'm
that.
torturing you.
Yeah, I had a conversation the other day with somebody else about that, and I was just saying that the research review series for computing is just a complete plagiarism of everything else that's been written 10 years before. So come on, Ofsted, just wake up.
But it's. I mean, this particular paragraph leaps out at me, and I'm obviously not going to read this entire thing to you because I don't want to send you to sleep. But this bit caught my eye. Computing is not part of the latest statutory framework for the early years foundation stage, but is part of the national curriculum from year one. There has been debate about learning computing in the first years of schooling and the importance of getting it right. Several studies, not mentioned, have demonstrated that young pupils are able to wrestle successfully with the core concepts of computing. I'm not entirely sure what that means.
No, that's hokum and bunkum. Go on, carry on.
So with more concepts of computing, including more technical subject content such as programming and robotics. But again, if I go back to the curriculum, and I will stop doing this, I can't remember. I'm sure robotics is mentioned very briefly, but not in any detail. And again, to me, when I think of robotics, I think of and this is going to put an age on me here, I think of Robot Wars, which is not obviously, an extreme end of
it's
what
not that far away now. It's not that far away. We live in very, very technologically advanced times. So Robot Wars is just essentially a precursor of where we are today.
I mean, what was that? I mean, I think I remember watching that in the 90s as a kid. But again, if you ask me to define that as a primary teacher, I couldn't. And so the idea of as a primary class teacher, if computing's in my remit, it's not in my current job, but I know for a lot of teachers it is. I would not know where to begin, and this is where this guidance in inverted commas falls apart for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, I'm really sorry to kind of hammer them completely, but really that piece of research work is just a collection, is essentially a collection of writing from the last 10 years. So really, they're doing a good job in terms of bringing all the kind of research that I've been involved with and read before together in one place, which is fantastic. That's a great thing. But what they fail to do is to kind of acknowledge the fact that there is a community of teachers like me who kind of are associated through the Computing at School Network or the National Centre for Computing Education, who are passionate advocates for computing. You don't need to pretend to reinvent the wheel. That we are already here and we are already delivering a world-class, beyond national expectations, exceeding expectations, teaching and learning of computing in our schools today.
And
So
would you
just
say
come and see it.
but I mean, as a general thing, I mean,
Yeah,
as a general approach, you it sounds to me, I mean, and again, I could be wrong here. I mean, I'm not in the UK. I'm abroad in Lisbon. I'm in an
yeah, yeah.
international school,
Okay.
but certainly in the UK, what you're doing sounds to me like the exception, not the rule. It's
Well, yeah. Well, it's sad if that's the case. It makes me feel very, very disappointed that that
mm,
that might be the case, and it shouldn't be. But I do understand that there will be, and we talk about our Twitter presence. I know that part of my kind of uh, outlook and outreach on social media is the fact that I know that there are schools and there are people, as you describe, that there are schools who don't have the resource, don't have the kind of know-how to be able to do what I do. So that's why I'm happy to share what I've got and where I can. So to perhaps help others just to get that little bit closer to being able to offer this world-class computing curriculum that that is the centerpiece of the National Centre for Computing Education.
and I mean, just going back to, and I did say I'd stop torturing you with
Mm.
this, but
No, go on.
one of the quotes that's in this research study is that primary school teachers unfavorable to the new curriculum describe the requirements as being too advanced for the available physical resources and budget, which is what you've already alluded to,
Yeah.
and that staff lack the required skill set and knowledge to teach the subject, and that language used in the curriculum is overly technical. And this is what I've touched on already. Yeah. And what's come up sort of time and time again in this whole primary series, and I think that the difficulty for primary teachers is that we're teaching most things. I mean, in some cases, some people have specialists for certain things, but for the most part, it's everything. And so we're holding goodness knows what in our head about all sorts of different things, and it's kind of okay, but computing technology is a big one. It can't really be ignored. And I think some of the staff in school would quite happily. I mean, my co-teacher in year 5, she's not quite 10 years older than me, but she and I take the mickey out of each other because she's very much paper and pen and sort of old school, whereas I will try and kind of keep sort of as paperless as possible in organization of things.
Yeah.
But I've completely forgotten what my point was. There was a point I was going to make. It will come back to me. But I suppose
But
going back to
that Ofsted quote, would you be kind enough to read it back, because there are three ideas there that I think need to be unpacked.
Okay, so what the quote that I just read you before?
Yeah.
Okay. Primary school teachers unfavorable to the new curriculum describe the requirements as being too advanced for the available physical resources and budget, that staff lacked the required skill set and knowledge to teach the subject, and that the language used in the curriculum is overly technical.
Absolutely. Okay, so to unpack that quote into those three kind of concepts that they cover. First of all, the one to do with budget and financing. Yes, that's true. That is very true. And certainly what we saw during 2020 was the Department for Education for schools in England offering support to schools to provide schools with extra hardware to enable more home learning and remote learning and so on. So some of that has been partly addressed, but still there is this massive gap between those schools who do have the technology to deliver a world-class curriculum and those who don't. So that's the first point. The second point about the skill set and the subject knowledge of teachers, and you're quite right that as primary school teachers, it's enormous. I mean, I used to be a classroom practitioner, and I just couldn't get my head around everything that we needed to do. But I'm very fortunate that because of my kind of experience and interest, that computing is very much my thing. So I'm so pleased and feel very honoured that my bosses feel the way that they do in structuring my school, my three-form entry school, into this teaching kind of pattern where I deliver lessons to everybody across the whole school from nursery to year 6 as PPA cover. So that kind of helps things, but I know that then doesn't help the smaller schools. So for the smaller schools, then what we have in England is the Teach Computing initiative, funded by the Department for Education since 2018, where the National Centre for Computing Education offer a brilliant range of training and courses available to anybody who works in schools. So if people want to, they can improve their skills and subject knowledge. And now that we're in an age of social media too, anybody can reach out to people like me, and I'm more than happy to help with kind of just their day-to-day teaching practice. If you have to teach a lesson tomorrow and you're thinking, how on earth do I teach what you were talking about in your introduction? How on earth do I teach what is appropriate ways of searching the web? Then I can talk you through it. I can help you with some sort of lesson ideas and some assessment ideas. On that third point, which was to do with the technical vocabulary of the subject, I've kind of occasionally dipped in and out of that debate on social media as well. And my argument is that when you teach children as young as I do, you realize that they actually have an amazing kind of sense of curiosity, which knows no bounds. And if you're teaching them to read for the first time and write for the first time, there's no real reason why you can't introduce words like algorithms or pseudocode into their language. I don't expect them to use it as their regular vocabulary, but it's a useful kind of point to start from and say, in my nursery and early years practice, I actually do get children learning how to code. They don't necessarily know that they're coding, but I can see as an experienced practitioner that they are, and I can then record it as evidence of their learning.
I mean, I think, because of course we're always told as teachers, if you want to better yourself, you can. And schools, in terms of CPD, like that, again, there's budget issues, there's time issues, there's focus issues, there's a whole host. I mean, we can go into that, and that's one of many reasons I do shows like this. I treat
absolutely.
it as Dream CPD that I can hopefully share with lots and lots of people.
Absolutely. Well, on the Dream CPD front, for those listeners who are based in schools in England, the Teach Computing initiative and the National Centre for Computing Education continues. Although initially it was meant to be a 3-year scheme, but then obviously got extended because of COVID, they're going to be relaunching very, very soon at the end of this month, early part of next month. So the offer continues to be there, to the point that I'm actually very privileged to be leading a project funded by the National Centre for Computing Education, or funded by the National STEM Learning Centre, where if people wanted to be involved in, as you say, bettering themselves and improving their subject knowledge in computing, they can just get in touch with me, and I can signpost them to courses which, for all intents and purposes, will be free to them.
Which I think is also helpful. But do you think as well with computing, with technology, I mean, and of course teachers are overwhelmed with even as I'm sitting here, my brain is going, okay, but I want to better myself in this, I want to better myself in that. And it's prioritizing, of course.
Absolutely.
But do you think with something like this that there is that fear element, so that a lot of the time these primary teachers, and again I can only kind of speak from my own sort of interactions
Mm.
with people. I
Yeah.
wouldn't sort of put words in other people's
Yeah.
mouths, but other subjects are kind of less intimidating in some ways, because I think people feel with some of the technology that, oh, they know enough to kind of stick their PowerPoint on the interactive board, and that's quite
Yeah.
enough, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I just kind of shy away from the rest of them. But also I think that in talking about that fear, there is an element of, well, you are teaching children who, in some ways probably do know more than you do, but at the same time, if you're going to
Mm.
be working with young people and you're going to be working with those up and coming generations,
Yeah.
it's it's not a case of, if you can't beat them, join them. You kind of have
Mm.
to join them. You kind of have to be on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
on the front line with all of this, because
Mm.
otherwise you're going to, well,
Yeah.
it's not, and we're not even really talking about kind of in class and what we're doing in school. It's more kind of the wider world
Yes,
as well.
absolutely. Yeah, I get it. And what I would say is that, again, kind of falling back to this wonderful community of teachers on social media, that there are so many of us who are more than happy to help colleagues for free with whatever kind of technical question that you might have. So there isn't a need to feel the fear. I always operate on the principle of something that I first encountered in the civil service when I was one of these Whitehall Womble desk jockey pen pushers, and they called it
What a description, Alan.
a Whitehall Womble pen pushing desk jockey.
That was phenomenal. I mean, wow.
Keir Starmer's bag carrier was I for many years.
Sorry, I'm just
No, don't apologise. Don't
Oh,
apologise.
sorry, as you were.
Yeah. So the concept that I encountered in my kind of years of management bureaucracy was this idea, of the intelligent client. So you might not know everything, but as long as you know somebody who you can rely on and trust, who can help you with your knowledge gap, that's all you need to do.
I think, I mean, I do get that, and I think as someone who does a lot of research and who does,
Yeah.
I have the time to. I'm one of those. I mean, I live alone. I go home every day, and I can do that. But I do feel
Yeah.
sometimes for people, not in terms of CPD, it's not just the fact that schools are not offering it or delivering it or not even signposting people. It's often there is a time factor as well, and it's not that
Of course.
I'm trying to make the excuses there either,
Yeah.
but it's also the reality of this world and this post-COVID world that we live in as well, where it's there's a lot happening.
Yeah, absolutely, and I absolutely acknowledge and recognise that. But it is that opportunity to say, well, if you do want to, then please just ask. Yeah.
Oh, most definitely, and it's always lovely to know that people are out there to help. And I just even from the signposting point of view, because I know that people have messaged me in the past, and in the wake of, particularly in these subject shows that I've done, and have said, oh, you by all means share this, or please stick this in your show notes and all the rest of it. So it is nice to know that, and of course. If people aren't on Twitter, it's a little bit trickier, but we are trying to get as much stuff out there as possible, and I think it's wonderful to know that people like you and other subject leaders that I've come across do exist and are so giving in terms of their time and resources as well.
It's a part of my kind of outlook to say, being an open source kind of chap, it's just keeping myself accountable to others and enabling others to kind of scrutinize my work. And it's also a mutual professional development on my side to say, am I thinking along the right lines? Is this what you want to know?
I think because recently I've got I know people who are teacher training at the moment, and this idea that some of their mentors and things are saying to them, you have to come up with everything from scratch, whatever you're teaching, it has to be from the ground up. And I find the fact that this is still being peddled is, and I know we're kind of going off again on a tangent here, but I will pull it back. But I find it galling that
Absolutely.
this is
Absolutely.
still being a thing when actually you can utilize resources. You've still got to build a lesson around that. You've still got to deliver that. You've still got to,
Yes.
you can take things, borrow Magpie, however you want to describe
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but there's still you've still got
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stand in that room.
Yeah.
You know those children, you've still got to
Yeah.
deliver that. So
Absolutely.
the fact that it's being peddled that no, in order to be a truly authentic teacher and truly test yourself, you have to literally go from nothing.
Yeah, no, that's just completely outrageous that anybody should be subjected to that thought process. And I mean, I understand that there are others who will say, yes, but if you were to go down the kind of centralized curriculum route, which is essentially what the national curriculum is, but if you were to go down this centralized teaching pathway of resources being produced by one or two organizations, etc., then you're essentially turning schools into McDonald's, and everybody's learning out of the same polystyrene box. But it's not that, as you say, that as a teacher, you know that every class is different, every child, every learner is different, every relationship you have is different, and it differs from day to day. So as I say, I teach in a 3-form entry school. I can plan a lesson meticulously to the nth second, but do I tweak my teaching plans throughout my day? Sure, I do, because once I've taught one cohort, sure enough, the next cohort might be exceeding the learning expectations that on the journey that I took the previous class on, or they might be actually even slower. So one can never know. And it
No,
needs to
true.
be you as the professional in the room at the time doing your professional best.
And isn't that the truth? Before I move on to my next question, I'm just going to say hello to a few people who are in here
Yes.
with us. We've got Peter who's here. We've got Gavin listening in. We have got CJ head teacher. We have got Mr. Barzenji, who I really hope I have not butchered that. I'm incredibly sorry if I have. And then we have got 70% H2O official account. And apparently science is true. It's going to happen whether or not you believe in it, which I suppose
Yeah.
is a fair point. So I want to broaden out a little bit from computing as the subject and
Yes.
talk a little bit more about digital literacy. And I suppose these two things
Yes.
they do go hand in hand.
Yes,
But
they do.
we have a one of the many documents and things, admin, that we have to fill out at school. I won't say too much, but we have on the medium term plan, we have the computing bit, and then we have a kind of an additional digital literacy box, which is
Right.
because we don't teach computing ourselves, it's kind of how we're incorporating it more widely, if you like.
So is this the kind of model that your school and the kind of the powers that be that you work within in your workspace, is that the way they organise it? Because it's slightly different for schools in England.
Well, that's kind of how they look at it
Okay.
as in terms of curriculum planning. They see kind of computing as over there, and that's taught by a
Yeah.
specialist, and then
Yeah.
and then the kind of the digital literacy element is
Uh-huh.
kind of is class teacher responsibility, and how are we
get it. Yeah,
incorporating that in the things that we're teaching.
Yeah, I get it. It's kind of something that I would like to try and implement in my own school. That one of the things that I'm accused of is being a computing specialist and only teaching everybody means that people like me could be seen as de-skilling people like you. That if you don't teach computing at all, then you don't have that opportunity to develop your own kind of teaching practice in that part of the primary curriculum. So what I've thought of doing is segregating the computing curriculum into this branch of digital literacy where theoretically it should be more accessible to everyone. And in fact, if anything, digital literacy might be seen by many as the kind of the baseline, as it were, by which all kind of technological interaction is based. So yeah, I can understand why some schools and some kind of learning pathways would segregate digital literacy. But to come back to the English example and the way Ofsted see it, they've previously publicly said that they see computing as a 3-pillar approach of information technology, computer science, and digital literacy. So they've conveniently parked it in these 3 blocks. However, within the definition of digital literacy, according to Ofsted, they include things like data science and keeping safe online, staying safe online. I take exception to that because I think data science is a much bigger subject than can be incorporated into a sequence of digital literacy learning. So I've taken that out, and I explicitly teach that to everybody I work with for a 6-week sequence of lessons. You then also have this staying safe online, and there's been some tremendous work being done by some fabulous organizations to do with internet safety, particularly by the team at the Southwest Grid for Learning in England, who have produced this wonderful portal called Project Evolve, which is free for schools. I think it's certainly free for schools in England. I'm not sure how they kind of work with schools beyond the English boundaries, but what that's based on is a whole scheme of statements which were produced by the UK Council for Internet Safety back in 2020. And the statements run from a 4 or 5-year-old all the way up to 18. So there's this whole kind of structure that any teacher, and you don't have to be technologically literate, can follow and be able to pluck a statement out and say, okay, everybody, today we're going to focus on a statement on online relationships, or focus on a statement to do with copyright, and so on. So, there's plenty of scope to do all sorts of things in the name of digital literacy. But those are just 2 examples.
Oh, most definitely. And I think I sort of fill that box in often for the sake of filling it in. And because to me, so for example, today my children were doing were using iPads for research purposes.
Yes.
And we sort of, and at no point, I mean, we sort of have along the way kind of taught them how to research, but at no point have we had a lesson where we've just talked about what it means to research online, what that entails, how you can actually use search engines, what you can actually put into search engines to help narrow down searches and things like that. And just as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking I've missed a trick there in terms of digital literacy, because yes, they can do it, but can they talk to you about it in any great depth? Can they tell you kind of how they research online properly, in inverted commas? Probably not. No.
Yeah. So just based on that experience and based on your lesson today, then what I would say, kind of on reflection, is to say to the children, okay, now that you've been practicing doing a little bit of searching for information on the World Wide Web, let's understand a little bit about the technology that sits on the World Wide Web. The first point, very, very simply, is that the World Wide Web is a library. And like any library, you can walk into one library and find the book you want, but you can walk into a second library and not find the book you want. Yeah, so that's kind of a fairly simple metaphor that many people can relate to. The next idea is that the World Wide Web is a computer system which is driven by these things called web crawlers. They're like little mice who sit in your house, scurrying around, looking at nibbling absolutely everything. So they know everything, and they busy themselves all day, every day, just doing that. So that's how, when you type in any word into a search engine, it can come up with a list of results. And in year 6, we talk about how those results are compiled, etc. So, but the basic technology is this idea that beneath the bonnet of a search engine there's this set of computers called web crawlers, which then categorize and index every piece of data that is on that particular platform. And remember that each platform is a separate library. So you go to one platform, you go to the one that begins with B, you might find the top 3 results look like this. You go to the one that begins with G, you might find the top 3 results look like something else. When you talk to the children about those top 3 results, you also point out that some of these results might be people who paid to have that result in first place. And it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter whether that top result is actually what you want. If they paid for that privilege to have their result always at the top so that it makes you want to click on that link, then that's what they do. And that's how the web is maintained as a inverted commas free service to people like you, me, and the learners we work with. So that, in essence, is your web search lesson.
Yeah, it's your digital literacy. And just within a few minutes, you've just kind of completely changed that lesson around for me, and incorporated a level of digital literacy that, now I think about it, is quite obvious, but actually,
and accessible.
Go on.
And accessible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, would you say it was accessible? I've not made you touch a keyboard. I've not made you kind of talk about really, really technical words about the way the search engines work. I've just merely signposted you to a couple of metaphors that most people should be able to relate to.
Yeah, and I think that, and if I can understand that, then my 10-year-olds certainly can. And you just made me think about, we talk a lot about, I say a lot about, we touch on, because of course have to be careful in primary, about misinformation and where information is.
Misinformation and disinformation,
and where that's coming from.
Yeah, and that comes into staying safe online. And you can then draw that in, and you can say, okay, we're going to stop this moment of digital literacy learning, and let's move into a moment of learning, reflecting on our staying safe online practice. To say, do you understand that the World Wide Web is a place where anybody can share anything with everyone? Quite simply.
And I think that gets lost a bit, because I think, again, because these children have grown up with it, and because in school, yes, we're supervising it and all the rest of it, but of course when they go home, they're and I said sort of at the start, I don't want to kind of make this about sort of social media and the access that they have, because we all know none of us are under any illusion. But I also wonder, in terms of linking sort of home environments and schools more in terms of technology. Of course, we had everybody in our houses and in everywhere when we were on video calling, and that's not so much what I mean. It's more the idea of I think there are parents who would benefit enormously from being more involved in their children's digital literacy. And again, it's me being quite whimsical here and saying, it's quite easy to sit here and say it. It's quite another to facilitate that whole thing. But it is that subject, computing digital literacy, that I do feel especially is what keeps parents awake at night, what their children are doing, all the rest of it, what comes into school, what we discuss with them. And I just wonder if there's maybe scope, and I don't know if you do this in the school environment that you work in, where you do seminars for parents or anything like that.
Yes, we do. My bosses have been absolutely brilliant, and my school are an incredible is an incredible community. Very, very supportive parents, and as I say, my senior colleagues are just wonderful in allowing me time to offer those kind of seminars, to the point that I offer a kind of almost like a parent surgery, to say, if you've got a question, whether it's kind of to do with hardware, actual fixing of hardware, to I'm sorry, but I am worried about my son or my daughter spending too much time on their device. What can I do about that? Then you can come to people like me to get some advice and get some support.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
Because I feel, certainly at kind of the back end of primary, sort of year 5 and 6, almost every parents' evening I sit through,
Yes.
without fail, it will come up multiple
Yeah,
times,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm always reticent to kind of give an opinion, or kind of, because that kind of gets taken out of context, where you say, well,
Mm,
how
mm.
many hours should they be
Yeah,
online gaming?
yeah.
Should if I supervise them, then why can't they be on TikTok and Instagram and all
Mm,
these various
mm,
other things?
mm, mm.
And I do sometimes feel that I get backed into a corner, or I fall into a trap, because although I'm aware of these things, I'm of the generation where it kind of, all this sort of came about sort of in the back end of my teens. So yes,
Yeah.
to an extent I've grown up with it, but I also, again, this is where the kind of the knowledge part and what teacher responsibility is in terms of internet safety and all the rest of it,
Mm.
where, I mean, I don't know where that line is, or is it a line that is constantly moving, shifting?
It kind of is, and but it's been very well defined. That line is currently very well defined. That as a community, as a school community, we as teachers and we as school working in schools, certainly within the English legal system, are expected to uphold the statutory obligations of safeguarding, etc. So.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, for my school, our line is absolutely clear, and we subscribe to services to support our work in doing that. So if a parent comes in and says, some of the things that you've just said about, my son or daughter's been spending too much time on this app, or they've been subjected to really, really obnoxious kind of comments and feedback and interactions from another platform and so on, I'm here to help them to just get through that moment and to find ways of being able to bring their family and their children back to a point of safety and security and control.
And I think that a lot of the time, I think what parents want is that reassurance, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is that
yeah,
it is another
mm,
adult saying to them, it's okay,
yeah,
by
yeah,
all means, ask me questions, and it's, learning more is it's kind of, it's not, I
yeah,
mean, to say know thy enemy is entirely the wrong thing. That's not what I mean at all. But
mm,
to be, I suppose, to feel better about something, if you like. I think that's what I'm trying to articulate.
yes, yes,
Knowing more is
yeah,
never going to be a bad
yeah,
thing.
yeah, absolutely. And this year's Internet Safety Day, which was last month now,
Yes.
was the big message was open up the conversation and let the adults talk to the children, let the children talk about their
Mm.
experiences of the online world and explore with them. Don't be intimidated by it. I mean, I recognize that as a primary teacher, I know that there are children who think it's okay to have social media accounts, even though they are officially underage. I can't officially stop them, and they will circumvent the systems in place. And I know that there are some families too who will say, yeah, well, why not? I'm just going to let my son or daughter have a mobile phone in their name, or I'll give them a mobile phone and I'll not apply any parental controls on the device. But that's not up for us to judge. It's for us to say, well, if you do need help, we are here to help you.
And I think that is a very important, that stance is very important and crucial to also to protecting our own boundaries as well, because
Yeah,
it's not up to us to say what they can and can't do under their
yeah,
own roofs,
yeah.
but I suppose what is up to us is ensuring that they have the information that they need.
Yes.
It's Yeah, I think that is hugely important, and I do think that there is room, certainly in the school that I'm in, for better connections with parents in that respect. And I also worry that with a lot of these things like Internet Safety Day, it's kind of almost treated like a token add-on, rather
Yeah,
than something
yeah,
that again runs
yeah,
through everything we're doing in
yeah,
terms of technology.
yeah,
It's just sort of, you do a poster, and it's kind of okay, it goes on the wall, and that's that, and
yeah, yeah.
it needs to be
I
a bit more than that.
Yeah, I laugh because I mean, for me, obviously, keeping keeping everyone safe is a priority every moment of every day. And when my bosses came in and saw my sequence of staying safe online lessons, they went, "Oh my goodness. Wow, it's not about posters, is it? It's actually about playing a quiz of scenarios and questions and really thinking deeply about what would you do in a situation like this, and knowing the difference between misinformation and disinformation, and knowing what it means to be trolled, and how one of the most phenomenal facts that I kind of repeat to every learner that I come across is that YouTube now is such an enormous video sharing platform that there is more content being loaded every second of every day than there are people on Earth watching YouTube. So you and I and all the listeners and everybody on the Twitter sphere could spend the rest of our lives in lockdown 2023 from the anniversary of our first lockdown, and spend the rest of our lives watching end-to-end YouTube videos, and none of us would watch the same content as anybody else.
That's just,
It
I
is,
mean,
it is
my
that enormous.
you are messing with me on a Tuesday evening. My slightly frazzled teacher brain cannot cope with information like that, Alan.
Yeah.
That's going to be, when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's going to be the thought that comes to me. And I don't know what to do with this information now.
But it's
But
phenomenal. It is
yeah,
phenomenal. But there is so much video content on one platform that
yeah.
there isn't enough time in humankind right now for all of us to watch every single moment. The point is of thinking about that thought, or thinking about that kind of concept, is the fact that if people say, "Oh, but sir, I can complain about a YouTube video and they will take it down," they will never take it down. There is too much content for the YouTube kind of content regulator to regulate. That's the point. And really, because they are commercialized, will they truly want to take it down? No, it affects their revenue, so they won't.
No, and I think it's also, we're not in the business of, and again, I try and explain this to parents as delicately as possible. We're not in the business of scaring people, but
Outrage.
you've
That
got
kind of
to,
concept of outrage, where everybody piles on to kind of condemn something or somebody to try and make a social media platform take it down. No, that's not the case. You're right.
but it's also understanding. So while we're not trying to freak children out, we're not trying to freak parents out, but at the same time, it's also presenting them with, actually, this is the reality of the world we
Yeah.
live in.
Yes, absolutely.
Forewarned is forearmed, or forewarned is forearmed. So I think that is important as well. But for teachers too, because we're constantly stepping on, some kind of explosion when it comes to. I mean, every day I have things coming into me, and I want to be the kind of the source of much like you, the source of calm that sort of says, I understand, and yes, this is where we are, and this is where we're at. But at the same time, we can educate, and we can have that understanding, we can build that understanding together. And again, where that kind of link between home and school, I think, is so important with this technology. And I suppose it's also them knowing that they're not this kind of just bobbing around in the storm, not knowing what to do. We teachers, I mean, not that they particularly want to hear it, we're bobbing around in the storm too, but we're also trying to kind of steer as best we can. And our
It's a
interest
very
in the
swan-like effect that we portray.
Yes, definitely. With the manic legs underwater. I remember first hearing that analogy as a new teacher, and thinking, what on earth is that? Oh, right, okay, I understand. One of my sort of final questions for you, and again, it's a bit of a kind of, I mean, you defined computing, I suppose, so beautifully when I was thinking, oh gosh. But my sort of final question is a bit kind of washier than that, really. It's more, and again, I don't know how succinct you can be, but let's see. In terms of sort of computing kind of going forward, moving on to sort of, let's talk about the near future. where do you see it? I mean, you can talk from sort of your own personal experience. Where do you feel you're going to take this subject next, and digital literacy next? What do you think are going to be the next sort of big things? Obviously, we talk about, well, we haven't really talked about it here, but kind of ed tech now. There's so many platforms,
yeah,
Google Classroom through to Dojo,
yeah.
through to, you can do pretty much whatever. You can teach your entire, there are adaptive learning platforms, all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
from your point of view, kind of where are we going with this?
Yeah, I think I'm going to address the big one, and I'm sure many will kind of concur. It is the adaptive learning. It is the Chat GPT. It is the AI, and being able to. I've seen some really, really beautiful demonstrations, and when I say beautiful, I mean elegant demonstrations from colleagues who have said, "I've tinkered with and tinkered around Chat GPT, and I've run a Chat GPT sequence to plan a lesson for me." And when you see the lesson plan, you think that is beautiful. That is quite extraordinary. And it's being able to help learners understand that beneath the bonnet of these kind of adaptive learning and Chat GPT style soft pieces of software, there is some very, very clever stuff going on. What's happening is that these systems are collecting data from many, many sources, building it into a bank of information it is able to process really quickly. And it's up to you as the AI user to be able to manipulate that collection of data into something that resembles what you want. And it's that process that I think is going to be the new challenge of teaching and learning. But for people like me, I expect to be able to help my learners understand that in a few years' time, this will be commonplace. And rather than them having to write an essay on the whys and wherefores, for example, of the Second World War, they might just run a Chat GPT sequence to emulate an essay of, say, 1,000 words that talks about the same thing.
Blimey. I mean, that is a thought. I know, and we talked about this on the weekly review on Sunday, but international baccalaureates are going to allow ChatGPT to be used as reference for essays on the proviso that they can justify the use of it and all the rest of it. I mean, is that kind of where you see sort of, I mean, I know we're primary teachers, but kind of thinking forward into exams and beyond, A levels, etc., university.
Yeah, and there's as you were saying, if you can't beat them, join them, kind of thing. And it's being able to understand and respect that this technology exists today, and we can learn to use it to our advantage, and not to be intimidated by it. But there is quite a lot to learn and to understand the kind of the basics and the process, and that these things are not a case of, oh, I've got a device in my hand right now, I'm just going to ask it to help me produce a radio show that could go out for 90 minutes on a Tuesday evening talking about computing. That's not going to happen.
No, I mean, I don't know. Some people might prefer to listen to that. That's what I should have done. I should have generated the entire script for this evening. Maybe it'll be more palatable, but I don't think it'd be half as much fun.
But it does take time, and it will take and it is taking a process, and it's being able to understand that process. And when you see the product of some adaptive learning or Chat GPT type output, you will still see that there are still kind of edits that we humans will want to make and modify.
Oh, most definitely. And I think that there is obviously, when all these new weird wonderful things come out, of course there is the instant panic. I mean, I don't know if it's a moral panic or if it's a kind of just
absolutely.
But I think you're wise in saying that in order to kind of not be afraid of something, you have to understand it. And I suppose that once the sort of the initial freak out, particularly with something like Chat GPT, has died down, then will come this kind of more sensible approach, and actually, okay, this is the reality. How are we going to integrate this? And again, there are definitely primary children that I know who are aware of it and aware of how to use it. And I haven't had the conversation with them yet. I haven't approached it with them because I sort of haven't reconciled in my own mind how to go there.
Make use of it. Yeah, and that's why I say that within the kind of the strand of digital literacy, as we were talking about earlier, that it has to be broader than that. Digital literacy is simply those kind of almost like a set of functional skills of you being of an individual being able to use a keyboard as a touch screen, to be able to navigate around the World Wide Web, and a whole kind of sequence of core kind of life skills, I guess, is what some people might describe it as. And whereas ChatGPT is more kind of into the informatics and data science side of computing.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, if nothing else this evening, Alan, I think I've learned that the computing national curriculum is, I mean, by all means, use it as a very, very sort of small basis, but actually go forth and do better is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is not to be intimidated by the because when you unravel it, as we've tried to do tonight, when you unravel it, there are so many strands, so many ideas, so many concepts, so many links, and it isn't. I wouldn't expect anybody, whether inside or outside the teaching community, to be able to kind of completely nail it down. And I'm still on a journey of discovery every day. So it's just being able to be open and honest with oneself and say, if I'm not sure, do I know somebody who might be able to guide and steer me? And
And I
ask.
think as well, and modeling that in terms of, because I mean, I often say to children, I don't know, I'm going to have to ask somebody. I don't know, I'm going to have to look it up, because somebody, I can't remember who said it to me, but it's better to admit that you don't know than lie convincingly, or something. I can't quite remember what it was, because I thought, gosh, that's true. And also, who are you trying to get, like 9-10-year-olds? You know, I'm not trying to prove anything in front of them. If I don't know, I'm gonna tell them I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And many learners I've worked with respect us for it more so, because what we're trying to model is actually this kind of sense of understanding that learning is a continuous journey and it doesn't stop at whatever time home time is. That for us as adults, we're learning just like they are.
Yep, and I have to say, I mean, you know, even for me, I think that I've understood something. And just going back to the lesson we talked about, just my little research lesson, I've now within 5 minutes sort of seen that completely differently, and seen how the digital literacy aspect can actually be elevated without really having to know much more than I already do, but and using kind of real life context that they already understand as well, and building that into what I'm doing. So I feel I've learned a thing or two this evening, which has been the point of any CPD, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Alan, I think that, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think that we will pause it there for this evening. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join me. I really do appreciate it. And I know we've kind of gone off on lots of kind of little journeys, but I think that
very
we've done quite well.
I think so too.
I think we've done really well. And you know, you are obviously available on Twitter and people can kind of come and check you out. There's a few things that I'll put in show notes as well. And I do hope that you will join me again at some point. I know that you dip in and out of a few TTR shows. So
I just think it depends on your station's policy for regular guests.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I mean, I'm sure that we can find a way to have you appear again. But it's always nice to know that there are experts we can tap into for different things. So you never know. You might get called on again.
Thank you.
But it's been an absolute honour to have you with me for our fireside chat. And I hope you have a lovely rest of the week. And just this has been very eye opening. So I appreciate it enormously.
Thank you very much, and look forward to catching up with everybody again on the Twitter sphere.
Fantastic. Right, so that was a very, very interesting chat this evening. I mean, I feel like we went off on a lot of different tangents, but it was definitely interesting to unpack computing in a little bit more detail, to talk about digital literacy as well. So I hope that those of you who have listened in have enjoyed, and if you'd like to listen back, this will be available on the same link for 30 days or so. So do, if you've dropped in last minute or if you're listening back, enjoy. The only other thing that remains for me to say is just a reminder that the show this evening is sponsored by John Catt Education, a leading provider of educational books and magazines. So if you're looking to further increase your CPD reading, or your CPD reading. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think I'm hungry. I think that's part of the problem. Let's try that again. So John Catt, there's a lot of fantastic books. I often go through their Twitter feed. I've got about 5 books that I've got my eye on currently to do with various different things. So do go and have a look. Thoroughly recommend. In terms of shows going forward, I don't know at the moment. I think that there are a couple of primary subject shows I'd like to still do. I certainly want to revisit primary science again. So if you know any subject leads out there, or anyone who is particularly passionate about a certain subject within primary school that maybe I haven't covered, or you think I need to do more on, please let me know. And other than that, have a fantastic rest of the week, and I will speak to you all soon.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.